Okay, today we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about different types of needles that you would use in Tunisian crochet. We're also going to talk about the difference between using the needle size that the yarn calls for and using a needle size that suits your taste. So, first off, I want to show you these two blocks that I've done up. This one on the left is much tighter stitched, has a little bit more curl to it. This one is a little bit looser, has a little bit less curl, still has some curl, but I'm going to tell you how you can fix that. This left one I did with this double-ended bamboo needle. It is a size 5.0 millimeter or an H8 US size needle. Can't get it to clear up there. When I looked at the yarn, it recommended that I use a 5 millimeter for the knitting size, a 5.5 millimeter for the crochet size. I didn't have a 5.5 millimeter readily available, so I used a 5.0. Even if I did a 6.5 millimeter hook, this would still be pretty tight. And the reason for that is this is for when you're doing regular crochet, this recommendation. And when I do Tunisian crochet naturally curls because most of the time you're working on the front of the yarn. You're working on the front of the work, so it starts to curl forward. And there's several different ways you can get it to loosen up. One way that has helped me tremendously, not just to help with the curl, but I have a bad wrist on my left wrist, and I was having trouble with both knitting and crochet. And when I switched to Tunisian crochet, and I switched to a larger size needle, it wasn't as hard to get the stitches in, and I found I wasn't holding the work as tightly, and lo and behold, my wrist wasn't hurting when I was doing the work. So it helped me there a lot. So one rule of thumb that I usually do is if that yarn size is sport weight, usually it's going to call for a 5.5 millimeter or so on the label, and I usually go up 3 sizes. So I use an 8.0 millimeter hook. That's what this hook is right here. And that's actually what I used to do this square on the right. It's a looser stitch. It has less curl. Another thing you can do is when you're doing your foundation row, if you work into the back bumps of the chain instead of the loops here, it can sometimes help with the curl. And also you'll notice I did a purl stitch row for the first and last row here. The more purl stitches you use, the flatter your work is going to be. I found a lot of times what I'll do, like when I'm doing a washcloth, I'll do 3 rows of purl, which flattens out the border usually on this side, and then I'll also do 3 purl stitches or 4 purl stitches on the side, and then do my simple stitches or whatever my pattern is, and then I'll do 4 purl stitches on the side over here, and it kind of flattens it all out. You can also do a combination where you can do purl, simple stitch, purl, simple stitch, or purl, knit stitch, and it comes out to like a ribbing, but it also has a flatter effect. There's a lot of different ways, but rule of thumb, if it has purls in it, it's usually going to be flatter. So that's how you reduce the curl. I do want to go over the different types of needles that you'll find when you're doing Tunisian crochet. I usually use my set from Stitchberry. It's a double-ended hook. Both ends are the same size. Okay, and this comes in handy when you're doing work where you're doing a lot of color changes in rows, and you'll do one color pulling through this way, and then you'll drop that color, pick up a different color, and pull it through to do your return pass. drop that color, pick up another color, and you can do this as much times as you want. You can go forward and back and then change your color, but when you're going back and forth and change your colors alternately, that's when you'll have to use, well, it would be very helpful to use 2 hooks, because you'll be pulling it through this way and then you'll be pulling it through this way. So this also comes in handy when you're doing the spiral round technique, like if you're wanting to make a beanie in the round using 2 colors. You'll have to use 2 strands of yarns, and you'll be using that technique a lot if you do it in the round. So that's one type of hook. It's double-ended. You'll also notice that these are designed for Tunisian crochet in that they're very flat. There's no bumps here. And the hook is an inline hook. The hook doesn't come out further than the rest of the handle. And that's what you want in a crochet hook. If you look at a regular crochet hook, it can be inline. Sometimes it'll be in line, but it'll usually have this thumb grip, and that makes it really hard to do your stitches when you're doing more than like 8 stitches. So this I would keep to regular crochet, and these I would use for Tunisian crochet. There's also some hooks that just have the one hook on the on one side, and then on the other side they'll have a stopper. That's if you're just doing you don't need to do both ways. You can go forward and then back and then change your yarn, and so you're always changing at this one side, so it doesn't really matter. It could be if you're not changing your yarn at all. This is the most simple needle you can find. And then when you're using the double-ended, I found that there's also, you can get a little knitting needle end, and it works just like a stopper. So if you want to do that, you can. Another thing you can do is you can get a Tunisian Afghan hook that has the hook on one side, and instead of the stopper at the end of the hook, it actually has a cord attached, and it can be various lengths, and at the end of the cord is a stopper. And the reason why it has the cord on there is so that if you're doing an Afghan or a blanket, usually you have to cast on like, I don't know, 200 stitches, and they all have to be able to sit on your hook. So that gives you the extra length, so 200 stitches can fit on your hook. Sometimes you'll actually see where the other end, instead of a stopper, it's another crochet hook, and that's so that you can do the unique color changing method where you pull the yarn through the one way, you pick up the other color, bring it back, pick up another color, bring it back, so you're using 2 sides of the hook. And that can be a little confusing if you're not used to that technique, but once you watch it a few times and you practice it a few times, it kind of clicks, and then you're good to go, and you're wondering why you never did that before, because it is awesome and addicting. So that's all for the needle types, really. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.